Amanda, you did not want to reopen with the pledge, correct?
Nope.
Let him get logged in. All right, we'll go ahead and get the work session started. Since we already opened the regular meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, we will skip that for this part. Just an overview, this is the second of 2 work sessions. And as the board's executive secretary, I will be facilitating this again tonight. I will help guide discussion, keep us on schedule, and ensure the agenda moves forward smoothly so that our timeline is productive. This evening, the school board superintendent and business manager will provide a review of the information provided at the September 29th work session. And they will review the discussion that surrounded micro-schooling, 4-day school week, and the future of CN primary. It's important to remember that no official decisions or voting took place on September 29th, and the same is for this evening. There is no official voting or decisions being made. These sessions are meant to explore and continue discussion on options for the school board to take formal action at a later date. The board and superintendent also welcome public comment following discussion of the agenda topics. And we continue to ask that those comments remain respectful, focused, and centered on the long-term success of the district. If you haven't already and you would like to speak, please be sure to sign in at the entrance. I will be grabbing that shortly. Mr. Morgan and Ms. Baumgartner, you can provide a review of the information discussed on September 29th. And at this time, you may call on administrators or other staff members to add information, insight, or clarification. Board members, you're encouraged to take notes and prepare questions following their review.
All right, so on the 29th, we had a couple presentations. First, Mrs. Lemon gave a presentation on micro-schooling. And it was kind of a passion project-based school within a school program that is referred to as micro-schooling. It breaks down barriers for students who maybe aren't enjoying school or aren't fitting into the regular school day. Is there anything you want to add to that, Ms. Lemon?
Do you need a refresher?
I don't.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
The goal of that would be to be able to maybe bring in some students from outside that are maybe homeschooled or already on a digital school, to plug them into schooling of their interests, but be able to meet graduation pathways. We'll go from there. The second presentation was given by Mr. Stuck. It was about a 4-day school week, to which we ended up, the board had requested that we put out surveys, so we have that data that we'll share after we do the overview. And the 4-day school week, a couple of the main important points is savings for that would come from operations only. It would not be from salaries. Nobody would be losing pay for that time. We'd have to do some things creatively and maybe up some wages hourly to be able to offset the days that they weren't working. But looking through what some other schools do, typically nobody loses wages. I know that's a big concern.
That's employed by the school.
That's employed by the school. We do have a group that I'm not sure, it's Chartwell's. We contract our food services with them. There could be a possibility of that, but that would be up to Chartwell's and how they handle that. And then we spoke briefly about Central Noble Primary. Should we make a decision not to do a 4-day school week, or the state ends up not approving a waiver if that's the way we go, what we would do with the primary building. We're going to have to do something, whether that's move everyone over and repurpose that, or shut it completely down. Those are things that we'll have to look at. So that we'll get into here in a little bit.
That was quicker than I thought. All right, additional discussion. Now that Mr. Morgan has provided a review, we will move on to open discussion with board members. As with the review, the superintendent or business manager may invite administrators or other staff to provide input as needed. The topics are as follows. Consideration of consolidating kindergarten and first grade from the Wolf Lake campus to the Albion campus. Consideration of micro-schooling option, and consideration of 4-day school week model, including survey data.
So we'll just start out, we'll kind of flip it. We'll start out with the data that we collected. So we sent out a couple rounds of surveys to community members, parents, put it on social media. We also surveyed our students and staff members. The board, you have some of these results in front of you. So we got 8 for the communities school or the community survey that went out to parents, grandparents, community members. We had 844 responses. Of those, 655 identified themselves as parents or guardians. 189 were non-parent respondents, so that could have been grandparents, community members, business owners. So there's a breakdown of that. So when you go to the support level, from parents and guardians only, of the 655 responses, 65.1% were either strongly supported or somewhat support the 4-day school week idea, while 24.8% somewhat opposed or strongly opposed, and then there are 10% of those that responded that were neutral were unsure. It's just a graph that kind of shows that same thing. One of the big things that we've heard is about childcare. So from those responses, those 655 parent responses, 63.4% had said that they would not need childcare. 24% didn't respond to the question, so that kind of leaves it up. I don't know if that means that they don't need it, or if they do need it, or they just didn't respond. 6% said occasionally that they would need childcare, while 5.2% said that they would need childcare every off day. So out of that 655 responses, 5.2% is about 32 families. So if you average 2 kids per household, that's about 60 to 70 kids that need some daycare services every off day. Again, just another graph pointing that out. From community respondents, so not those who didn't identify themselves as parents or guardians, 61.4% either support or somewhat supports a 4-day school week, 31.3% oppose, somewhat strongly oppose, while 7% are neutral. So overall, out of all 844 responses, it was 64.2% were supportive, 26.2% were opposed, 9% were neutral, 9.6% will be technical. Again, just another graph that shows that. The next survey that you'll see on there goes by grade. So it's of 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. This one was interesting because I would have thought that most kids would be like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I would have thought we were seeing like upper 80s, lower 90s, and we didn't. It actually kind of aligns overall with what we're seeing from the parent and the community survey. So 65% were positive for it, and 21% were negative. So that was kind of shocking. I would have thought that most kids would be like, yep, 4 days, but they weren't. So that tells a lot about our kids. Then staff responses was the next one. So all staff responses, there were 92 responses from our staff. 79.3% were positive or for or supportive. 12% were neutral, and then 8% were opposed somewhat or strongly to those. I believe that's it for those surveys. Like I said, most of and I had sent the board earlier, I sent you a email with links to that survey data. I didn't want to put up here because it has personal emails on it with, from people that could be identified with the answer, and I didn't want to put that on this. But you guys have access to that. Some of the common themes that were identified throughout the community survey was childcare, which looking at those results, while it might be an issue for some, the overwhelming majority doesn't seem to be an issue. But there still are those families that would need it, which we would need to work on a solution for them. As far as on the staff side, the biggest concern was about pay and what that would look like. Again, nobody would lose pay. None of our groups would lose any of their annual pay. The savings from this would not come from pay, it would come from our operations and things like utilities, saving on fuel and wear and tear on our buses from not being ran for that day, saving on things that you don't think about every day, but paper towel, toilet paper, paper just in copying, those types of things that are maybe small when you look at it by weekly or monthly, but over a year's time add up. So we're still in thinking that it would be a 2 to 5% savings in our operations, looking at a 4-day week. The biggest costs, and I don't want to say savings, but the biggest cost measure that we think would be the increased enrollment that it could possibly bring. If you look at roughly $7,000 a kid that we get from the state for our state tuition from the complexity grant, if you bring in 50 new students to the district, that's $350,000, which more than covers our shortfall that we're going to be experiencing with SEA 1. So, are there any questions from the board?
How much of that $7,000 that the state gives us is actually spent educating us to with their curriculum and all that ballpark? I know it's not a known number, but do we have that?
Like
Would go to
every bit of
teachers.
it.
I mean, it all goes to our education fund, which all gets to from their teachers' curriculum. Yeah.
I guess-
Jason, what was your question? I didn't hear you down here, sorry.
I just was curious how much of that $7,000 the state gives us per student is spent educating that student. And maybe not teacher pay, but like curriculum and stuff like that.
And it goes student by student, I would say, because some of our students that attend Impact, like we spend almost all of it sending them to Impact. So they come back then for half the day educated on them.
So that student costs us more.
That student will cost us more, yes.
And just when we're thinking about pay, because again, that was one of the big things we've heard from our staff. So if we even look, I just did a paraprofessional as an example. Right now, our starting pay is $13.70. East Noble starts their pairs at $16.36, and West Noble starts their pairs at $14.50. So we are well below our surrounding districts. If we keep their pay the same for a 4-day week, we could increase our starting rate to $14.59, more in line, at least with West, still below East, but that just makes us more competitive to try to get staff, even support staff, into our district. So we definitely are proposing to you, board, that we keep pay the same and just work some different daily numbers for them.
I think a benefit of that too would be making us competitive, not only with our support staff and our bus drivers, but also in our teachers, making us more competitive and keeping that pace with some of the surrounding schools. Well, they may not be quite as much, but making their daily rate a little bit better. And I think it actually, I don't think you can put a cost savings to getting candidates that are qualified to teach. You know, like we said, the last time we had 2 positions that were open for most of the summer and we got 0 applicants. So that is not best for our students either. So trying to increase the talent pool and the people that apply would also be able
So in your example for the IA, you're saying that their rate would stay the same, but they earn that same rate in 4 years.
Their annual rate would stay the same, but their hourly rate would increase. Yep.
And that's the same across the board. For all staff.
Yep.
I wonder if they retook this survey and they knew that to be a statement that wouldn't turn to 100%. Because I'd make the same amount in 4 days as I could make in 5, I sure I'll do it in 4.
And their 4 days will be a little bit extended from what it is now. But calculating, I think I calculated it would be about 80 hours less for one of our regular paras for a year, but we would want to keep that annual salary the same.
Is the school day was proposed at, was it 50 minutes longer?
It's a little bit, I think it's like 65 minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the hours would be starting same.
The hours will be 8 to 3:45. There is a little bit of a change just to make it fit with on the staff side. We've put in 7:45 to 4, it'd probably be more like 7:30 to 4. So we have 15-minute difference.
We still have to submit to the state, right?
Yes. Yep.
So what's the I mean, I understand the process. We don't have to make that decision until they say yes or no. If they say yes, we could still say,
Yeah.
not right. So all of this hinges on whether or not they even allow this to happen.
Yep. Yep, and Mr. Taggart and I had a conversation with the state superintendent, Dr. Jenner, and she told us some things that we would need to do, and she said, to be honest, it would be about 50-50 on whether or not the state would approve it or not. So
If we apply for the waiver and they approve it, do we have to do that, or can we stay as we are?
I have to do it, stay how we are.
Yeah, we're up.
Does the state then review academic performance like
Yeah, so
every
they
year?
have within their waiver, there are things that we would have to meet. Be reviewing academic performance, reviewing attendance, behaviors, all that kind of thing. Typically, it's on a year-by-year basis. We would be asking for a 3-year trial, but you can stop it at the end of 22. After a year, you say, no, we're going to go back. So
And how often will the state review it if we ask for it?
every year, the state would look at it every year. They would want
Even
to
if we
have.
do a 3-year waiver, they review
Yep,
it, so they could pull it at any time too.
no, I don't think that they would pull it, but they would just want to see the data from it.
What's the timeline on submitting paperwork? The state makes a decision.
So it's a rolling basis. They're not real clear. Basically, they say you can start submitting late fall, early winter through the spring. And they review them on a rolling basis. So if we end up waiting, if you guys have questions or things you want answered, we brought back, to the board meeting on the 17th. You can make a vote then, or you could wait until the December one if we needed more answers to things on what you wanted to do. But I do think even if we submitted by December, we would have an answer by late February, early March. Maybe a little sooner if we submitted it yet here in November. So that's not a guarantee.
Talk to the state superintendent.
Yeah.
Has he had any other schools inquiring?
They have had one, the Benton Elementary, and so, which they did approve. They had another that they had done, but they didn't approve it. And I think Gabe had said that it was because they were short on minutes, maybe for their 7th grade or something like that. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it.
If we apply, we don't get it, can we reapply? Can we change
They
something,
give
fix it?
you like a 30-day window and tell you the things that they want more information about, or that they didn't think fit, so you could look at it and see if you can make changes to that 30-day window. Actually, I think it's a 29-day window.
There's some concern in the community that this may not hurt middle school kids and high school kids, but kindergarten, 1st grade, the formative time, that some of the test scores aren't showing that well in other states. I guess I just throwing that out there if you have a.
Yeah, well, I think at the last meeting, David said that the research said that in rural communities where time was extended, that there was like a net gain, there wasn't any difference 4 or above for as far as academic performance.
And the school that's doing it, is it more middle school? I mean, I know there's one doing it in the state. You
It's
said
an elementary.
Are they doing like kindergarten then as
The
well?
school, I think it's a K-4.
Okay.
Okay.
Are they on a year-by-year basis, or they do a 3-year
They
trial?
did a 3-year, they're on a
Okay.
3-year pilot.
What's,
I think
what
they're
year are
in
they?
year 2 or year 3 of that pilot. Yep.
I know there's a lot of concern for like the younger kids that are busy and like to be busy in the day. I have one of those that doesn't like to sit still or likes to be busy. Do you feel like the staff at that point, when we make a plan for their day, you know, we would accommodate breaks as necessary and things like that for kids? We would have to be diligent in how we plan those longer days, right?
Right. And that's where I think, good teaching comes into play, and we have good teachers, so I think they would accommodate and make sure that those things happen. I know from my time at the primary building, it was always, we don't have enough time. This would give us a little more time.
And I think that is part of it too. Like, I do feel like on days where maybe, you know, grades aren't what I would expect to be brought home, they had a very busy day. And that's to no one's fault, but maybe I guess that might benefit on those particular days where trying to get things done and.
I think what we need to look at and remember is we need a backup plan. The state says no. If you guys decide, yeah, let's try for the waiver, we'll put a waiver in, the state says no, we still need that backup plan of what to do. I think our options really at this point, and Kim can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, like looking at coming shortfalls that are going to happen, would be to move everybody to one campus, repurpose Wolf Lake to put the preschool out there. I know there's been some discussion on what do they pay. We've had a long-standing relationship with the YMCA, like before I even came here as a principal that was running. They keep the prices low for our community because we don't charge them to use the rooms. In talking with the YMCA, if we charge them, they would have to up it. They already incur about a $50,000 a year loss on our YMCA program, keeping the costs low. So they're finding grant funding and donations to cover that. If we had to increase that, they would have to charge more, which would end up costing our families more. So I don't know that's good for our partnership to do that.
Well, and also, if I'm being honest, my son probably wouldn't have gotten to go to preschool because without a central campus, I couldn't have gotten him there. I mean, it took a village already.
So looking at repurposing Wolf Lake, I think is what we would need to do, of putting the preschools out there, putting the daycare out there. The daycare would be kind of self-funded. We would have the room to be able to use rooms out there. We've had some conversations with the co-op. Currently, West Noble has the special ed preschool, the EI, the early intervention program. We've had conversations about them bringing that if we were to move to be able to use some building space out there, which would bring us some money because they would rent the room. The co-op would rent the rooms from us. So there are some options there as far as the co-op goes. I think we're currently sending almost 20 some preschoolers into the early intervention program. So then they would be in our home district at that point. I know there was concern about space in the elementary. Dr. Younghans, could you speak to that on what that would look like?
Yeah, so as of right now, sitting in our building right now, we have the 4 rooms that are being used by those groups that you just talked about. There are 2 rooms additional to that are completely empty, that have nothing in them, so that's 6 rooms. We have 2 special education teachers who have at most, I would say a big group for them would be 10 kids. They're in full-size classrooms. We have music and art in a classroom, which could be moved to carts. And then we have art on a card, so they would go around the teacher's classroom. And then we have our guidance counselor in a full-size classroom. She has class 1 day a week. So my math tells me that's 11 rooms. Now, we would have to figure some stuff out. I mean, like, obviously, we need a room for special ed, so we'd have to do that. But if push came to shove, we can find 11 classrooms fairly easily right now.
Which would mean most grades, if they grew, could go to 4
Correct.
classrooms.
We have 3 sections of 4th grade, 4 sections of 3rd grade, and 3 sections of 2nd grade. So we have, what is that, 9 classrooms, 10 classrooms right now.
And we have a emotional disabilities room.
Correct, and again, that's a co-op kind of discussion decision. That actually is a double room, that's a huge room, that we could figure out maybe how to use a little bit more effectively, depending on what happens with that program. And again, that wouldn't be driven just by us, we'd have to work with co-op on that, but. So that would be 11, could be as many as 12 classrooms.
So we would have some room. I think at that point, you would probably get some cost savings, and there's some positions we could combine or eliminate if you moved everyone over. And moving the daycare and some things out to repurpose Wolf Lake, I think is probably a smart decision, in case we get some more growth in housing and kids moving in. Of course, unless we go to the 4-day week, if it would go through and everything went through, I think you would want to keep it as is right now to see what kind of out of district transfers in we got, because we may need to even put 2nd grade back, put 5th grade back, be able to create space for kids.
It's really hard to guess. We might lose some, we might gain some. Where does it all
Yeah, but
shake out?
I think a lot of this hinges on the 4-day. I don't think we can make really a true decision on that. And we can have a lot of discussion, but until the 4-day either goes or fails.
And I think the last option would be just closing primary building completely. But at that point, you're running a risk of, Jason, you can probably speak to this, working on buildings like that all the time. You let a building set like that for 6 months to a year and it doesn't get used, it starts to become, you might as well not use it at
It's
all.
just like putting the car, sit in the field for 2 years and not turn it on.
And at that point, I think if you had any growth that you needed to expand, you're gonna look at $40 to $60 million in a building project that you would most certainly have to do a referendum for.
And if we close Wolf Lake, how much do we think that saves a year?
Was it 175?
That would be kind of rough operational, but we would have to factor in, yes, different things, because there could be some contingent costs there if we would combine some things.
I mean, just like my family, I've got 7 grandkids, 10 being the oldest in the one grouping. And they're 5.8 miles from Northern Heights. And we get letters every summer from Northern Heights in my area about, hey, come to our school, and there's no transfer costs, there's no anything. So unless you're saving a lot of money, and that's $7,000 a kid, I don't know about that. Personally,
That's all things to consider.
yeah.
And that does what the class sizes if we do decide to bring it over. No change.
At this
This means we have the accommodations for the classes as they are.
Right, and there would be some room to make some grade levels 4 that needed it. The grade levels that needed, that were 3, we could keep it 3. Right now, our numbers just fluctuate so much. We go from classes of 91 down to classes of 68. It's not really consistent. I think, as far as micro schooling goes, I think it's a great, thing to pair with a 4-day week. Because I think it can bring in some of those kids. We had Matt, I think Mr. Knipper asked how many homeschool kids we had. So Matt Knipper, we had him pull the data. I think he's back there. So correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. He pulled from the last 2 years, students that left to go to homeschool or to digital school. We had about 61 kids in the last 2 years. So I don't know if help to bring some of them back or not. As far as micro schooling, but you know, if you could bring all 60 back, that would make it worth it. On its own, I'm not sure we bring in enough kids to pay for it. I know there's some grant money that Mr. Knipper talked about, but we'd have to look into that because those grants were written for specific things, and we have to make sure that they fit with the micro schooling model to be able to pay for that.
What kind of research do we have to do to find out how much this would cost the corporation, the micro school thing? With all the grants being accommodated and all that other stuff, what would the cost out of pocket for the corporation be?
So it would be whoever was willing to teach it, how many teachers you had, whether it was one or two, compared to kids that have brought it. We could get a cost of what it would
I
be.
forget, you told us, but I forget.
1 to 15.
Okay. We could get what the cost would be, but then it would be based on, does it bring kids in? Does it just take existing kids we have? Because, you know, it's a net zero if it's already kids that are going to school here. It only brings in money if it's kids that are out of the corporation already.
And we don't have any way to know what that is until we actually do.
Until we actually get it. That's why I think it'd be good to pair with the 4-day week. I don't know if we stay just doing 5 days and do some other configurations. At this time, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know at this time that it would be financially viable for us to do.
Do you guys have any more discussion?
There are ways to try to put that micro school out there and to like have an interview process for kids in the community to like test out how many kids in district, how many kids outside of district to see if it generates money. Because if you have 7 kids, that brings almost $50,000 and combined with some of the grant money that might fit that, we could pilot it for a year to see where it goes. And if you have more kids come in, you have a second teacher, and then like to try to tap into some of those kids that are no longer here. I want to go here while still accommodating some kids that it could be a good fit for.
And once word gets out, I think that's the thing too. It's gonna take a while to develop.
I think you got to try to get it to go for a year, find funding or grant funding, or make it a model that it's 50-50. It's 50-50 in district kids, 50 kids that aren't currently here, 50%. I mean, try to offset that. There are models of like an interview process, like is it academically good fit? Does their family dynamics fit the model of the education system and things like that, to like do like a lottery system for the kids that are in here, and then to kind of interview process kids outside the district that could come in. So if we did something like that, it could be a viable thing to at least offset that cost. We got to pay for a teacher to replace Heather, and that's the biggest thing, to make sure it is at least in that zero to pilot it. So,
And that's if we can find someone.
What would you say it would this be a feasible thing for us to say we could pilot this next year with 15 students? Am I crazy, or is that something that might be?
Pilot it with whatever number of students you would have. I mean, I
Well,
think
the goal
15
would be
the
no more than
max.
15.
Right, yeah.
That's why I'm saying 15,
Right,
if that happened.
What if there were 30 that were interested? Would you be willing to put another teacher in there? And
I guess that would depend upon the funds available to use for that. I think if the funds are not there, my personal, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we could only do what we're able to fund. And I would think if we could cover 15 students and a teacher, pilot it with that instead of saying no. And then potentially if we have more than that,
they also have quite a list of grants that are kind of not DECO. There's also DECO, remember, that's sounds really willing to help us. And then if you're interested in a zero cost to the district, there's the Indiana Microschooling Coalition that will just take over that, and they pay for the teacher, and the school kind of, that removes the school's
liability
control
for,
or options, or, if we want to make it our own kind of thing, that goes away. But there's also, there's lots of ways to make it zero cost, even if it's 100% of the kids are coming from inside right now. Of course, that's not the goal, but there are many, people are just sharing all kinds of grants with me right now. So things that are beyond even what Jared is saying already exist here in the district, but there are others out there that we apply for, including DECO, but others besides that too. And then that microschooling coalition that they would pay, it would be theirs within our school.
How long was that a contract you'd have to sign with those folks?
I don't know, we'd have to, I'm in contact with the guy who's in charge of it. He's a superintendent, in
Hendricks,
Indiana here,
Hendricks County.
George.
I got it.
I got it.
So Heather, I'm guessing if they take over, they get the funding and stuff, the state
Yeah,
as
like,
well.
it costs us nothing, but they get to make
They-
the decisions and if
So it wouldn't help us.
money that comes in, yeah, like, I think that kind of eliminates some of the weight of what we're,
Yeah,
Fair enough.
trying
what
to-
it does, if you're worried
That's
mostly
why I
about
asked the
the cost, it eliminates the cost too.
And also the benefit for the kids. I guess that ultimately that's what we're here for, so.
Realistically, how many do you think you could get for a year one pilot?
I think we can make the 1:15 ratio. I don't know, I'm interested I'd like Jared's idea of kind of putting it out there and seeing if it's interesting. I've had families come to me personally already and talk to me about it, and kids keep asking, when are they gonna go, and did it go through or not? So I know there's an interest. I don't know how much.
Mrs. Silver, it's in your building. What are your thoughts?
No, Heather and I met today and talked about some different grant opportunities. I think of these students who benefit, I would have the same questions as everyone else does. If they're going to draw enough students from outside of the corporation, taking 15 of our own students doesn't add anything to the total students that we have. The idea would be to make it attractive to students who aren't in our school or who have gone to an online school and want to come back, or who are homeschooled and want to try to, a hybrid type schedule or something different. So I think 15-1 is feasible. I just don't know how many outside of students that 15 would be.
Is there any way we could reach out to the kids that are homeschooled or kids that decide to go online? We said there was about 60 of them. Is there any way to reach out to those kids to see if this would be something they would be interested in and possibly coming back to Central Mall?
Matt, did those have contacts that
Yes, the information we would have would just be the information would be as accurate as when they left the
was when
district.
they left?
So it's possible that the contact would still be good, but it's also possible that we would be in contact.
Well, you could get 20 of them,
Yeah.
right out of the 60, that Craig will talk to you, give you an idea.
Right, yeah.
I would add too, that if we would do that, I think an in-person meeting of some sort would be better than a survey, just because it feels like there should be some back and forth questions and answers and.
Well, this is fully on your shoulders.
Virtual, yeah, Jared, virtual.
No, but I think the 60 is a place to start. They've left here for some reason, maybe, yeah, we can put a meeting together or something, reach out to them, say, hey, we're having a meeting, another option, and just see if we could get some pull to maybe get them back in the building.
I understand the financial side of things. We also have kids that we serve currently that need something different out of school. So we got to keep that in mind also. Like, is it a good thing for 15 of our kids that are here? Probably possibly could be. The added draw of possibility of adding more kids in a different section. But if we can figure out a way to pilot it with our kids and we maybe draw a couple others, I think it's a good start for a year, because we just make too many decisions based on money and like what's right for kids. Sometimes it gets pushed aside, even though we say it, we want to do the right things for kids. We're getting away from that already by talking about we can't do this without funding, which I get, but we might have to figure out a way to do it and figure out how to fund it in order to do the right thing for some kids that need something different. So I'll keep that in mind as we think about it.
I want to backtrack just briefly, and I'd like to ask Doc why your thoughts on the 4-day week, pros, cons, feelings. I think the big thing to me is retention of teachers, getting better teachers. It kind of feels like we're playing Jenga here, and we're losing some good building blocks, so.
Yeah, so my initial take on that is I honestly don't know. I will be honest with you. I think that good teaching overcomes a lot of deficiencies. I think that teachers with more time can do some exciting things in the classroom. I've seen that done. In my former life, we went from 45-minute periods to block scheduling, and it took about 6 months, and teachers loved it, and they didn't want to go back once they figured out how to use that time effectively. So I would think there would need to be some discussion of professional development to use that time. What I know is that kids are extremely resilient, and teachers are really good at their jobs. And given that effort, and given that time to plan, they'll do some amazing things. Do I know that it's the be-all, end-all to education? No, but you have heard me before say there is no right way to do everything, because if there was, everybody in the country would be doing it and no school would fail. So there's literally nothing that tells me that it can't work. There's part of me that says it's a change in paradigm, and that's a tough thing for any business organization to figure out. But I also think that it can be done if it's done right, and it can help kids. And I would agree with Jared. I think we have to go back to, you know what, having kids in school longer isn't necessarily a bad thing if we use that time wisely, because kids can learn in that setting. But if we're gonna just have to sit and do more, if instruction doesn't change and teachers don't continue to modify what they're doing, it's not gonna help. And we want kids to learn. It's about money in this case, but it's not just about money. It's about doing the right thing for the kids. So I don't know whether that answered your question or just.
No, that's good.
One thing I talked to Robbie about is that Monday we could have like a block thing where teachers get to teach something they're passionate about, or something different that's outside the scope of the curriculum. And like, it could be $10 a head per week, and that goes right to the teacher. Like, we pay the teacher to do that thing on a Monday, right? So you got 6 high school teachers that want to teach this thing, 15 kids in each class, they all pay $10 a week. At the end of the day, the teacher's making an extra $1,000 a month because we have that extra day. It's outside of their contract, it's outside the scope of the standards, but it might be something kids are into or excited about. You could be cooking or sewing, how to change tires. Like, I don't know what that might be, but it gives some flexibility to incentivize somebody to come here because they get the opportunity to teach something that they couldn't teach in the 4 days, but they have that extra day to do it for a little extra cash in their pocket, because we charge per head for something like a summer school program or a enrichment program. There's other things to be creative about to like incentivize people, like, hey, I get to work a 4-day week, but like this 9 weeks, I'm going to teach this thing. It's going to put an extra $2,000 in my pocket because I've got people that want to be here. $10 a head. We set aside a couple of classrooms where we put out Wolf Lake, something of that nature to incentivize a different idea. So the first thing is we got to make sure that we have to decide what we're going to do. If we're recommend that, or even see what the state says, and then we have to kind of move from there. And the other thing is whoever becomes the next superintendent has to have some idea of what this works or doesn't work, as far as they might have some new ideas that we don't know about yet. So all of this is kind of in limbo, so to speak, but we can probably at the next meeting make that decision on, like, do we apply to the state to see what they say? And then from there, we've got a series of dominoes that can fall because of that.
Well, another part of the puzzle is with the staff responses, I'm just going to round it up. You know, we had 80% positive, so we would potentially have an 80% buy-in. How do we engage and get buy-in from the other 20% to ensure success? Because in order to be successful, you've got to have buy-in, right? So that's another task for us.
Research about that would say you're never going to get buy-in totally.
No, I agree.
So you're going to have to get the early adopters to move on and then drag the laggards with them. That's just kind of how that goes in education. Those are the official terms, right, Dr. White? Laggards. Yeah.
I don't think we'll call them that.
No, we won't identify those, but that's what they talk about in our
Late adopters.
in our late adopters. Yes.
Anchors.
Laggers.
Wow.
You guys good?
Yes, ma'am.
Public comment? All right. This time we'll move on to public comments. You have 3 minutes, your time. Call your name in the order that you signed in, and remember that it needs to remain respectful, focused, and centered on the long-term success of the district. Your input is valuable and carefully considered, but this portion is not intended for open dialogue or debate. We have 4 people signed in. We'll start with first one, Vicki Jellison. Also, if your questions have been answered, you can pass your spot too.
Hello, my name is Vicki Jellison. I'm here as a grandparent, but also as a concerned town official, because when the town and the school work as good partners together, that brings success to everyone. And that's what we all want. And there's a lot going on in this conversation and a lot going on in my head, so I hope it makes sense what I have to say. My first concern is the results of the survey. I feel like depending on the age of the students, depended on how people answer, and everybody knows that. So a lot of the people that are for it are most of those people who have older children that can be home alone when there's no school and mom and dad are at work. And there's no easy answer to that, but I think that is something that comes into play quite a bit on how people answered that. My second point is, until I came tonight, I was really unsure on how you thought this would save money. You did a good job tonight explaining that staff are still going to get the same annual pay. So it's going to increase their hourly, so to speak. But my concern with saving money other than wages are how we think that's going to save much for building, for utilities and stuff. My question would be, on that day, you're potentially saying Monday, school would be not in session, are the buildings going to be available for practices, games, the staff to come and go, the students to have access to their lockers and stuff? Because if that's the case, I'm having a hard time understanding how that would really save on utilities and those kinds of expenses. And lastly, I want to touch on, in the first meeting that you had, Mr. Morgan read a letter. This is not the first meeting I've been to where I have heard staff members, administrators, school board members speak from their heart, and I appreciate that. I think probably the reason he read that letter during that portion was because it was an actual meeting and this is a work session. However, I think this room is full of a lot of people. We all need to hear these things. And so I wish that that letter could have been read to this larger group of people. And I think, and once again, I want to thank all of you for what you're doing. I know it's a very difficult decision, and I just hope that the community can respect the decision I made.
Next is Cindy Trowbridge.
Hello, my name is Cindy Trowbridge. I've been a bus driver for over 30 years at the school corporation and worked within the school corporation as well as some of my fellow bus drivers. We have a couple of questions and concerns we would like addressed. First, concerning the 4-day proposal, how do you plan to compensate our bus drivers who could potentially lose up to $4,000 a year should this proposal pass? I know you've said that you're not going to affect the wages, but I don't see any 100% guarantee on that. Also, as you know, right now, we just have an interim bus manager and a current full-time bus route opening. What are you actively doing to hire a new bus manager and to recruit new drivers? As you also know, bus drivers are not offered insurance and benefits. So what can we offer to new drivers to be competitive with surrounding areas? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Cindy. Next, we have Anna Glowinski.
Vicki brought up my concern.
Okay, thank you. And then our last comment signed in here is Jody Jordan.
I said I wasn't going to talk tonight, but you can see that I'm here. First off, I sent all of you on the board the notes of the running tally. Did everybody receive that, of the information? So I just went through and I made some notes from what was discussed earlier. And I just want to bring up some highlights. I'm not going to go over any of that, like I said. I am not for or against the 4-day school week. I am for exactly what Jared said. We're here for the kids. I don't care. I'm a teacher who didn't get a raise this year. I don't care. Because I'm there for those 28 students in my classroom every day. It doesn't matter. Jared, you said it exactly. Let's do what's right for our kids. The one thing I'm not for is increasing classroom size. So if we move to the elementary, I don't see any other way than our classroom numbers are going to go up. Yes, enrollment fluctuates, but that is probably, and I will say most of the educators, I'm not the only one here, that is the most concern for them, is that if those classroom numbers go up, it doesn't matter how much money you're saving. Yes, I know it shouldn't matter how many kids are in a room, that it's the quality of the education. Well, you can be the best teacher in the whole world, but when 28 little 5-year-olds need you, you can't be everything to them that you need to be. I'm not sure about closing the primary one because we already have 2 to 4 extracurricular activities a week going on there. I may be wrong on the exact numbers, but there's stuff going on there almost every night. I don't know how that would affect stuff going on here, if there's stuff going on there. I think that's hard to be able to say that we can actually shut our doors. My biggest concern is if we move all the daycare and preschool to the primary building, how that's going to affect our Albion community. Because, Amanda, like you said, it takes a village to get these kids to preschool now. I don't know that if grandma can drive 6 minutes, she's not going to be able to drive 20 minutes to Wolf Lake to take their grandchild to preschool. I think that's going to be more difficult than what we think at this point. I have met with DECO, and I will go into that with Jamie and everybody at another time, but they are 100% willing to help us write some grants, make this work. And I think our number one goal is to be just to increase our enrollment to our amazing school that we already have, because the kids that we need to pull in are out there, and we just need to make sure that we find them. And the amazing staff that you have are going to accommodate it no matter how it looks. If it's a 4-day week and our days are longer, I teach kindergarten and have for over 20 years. I guarantee you those brain breaks will be built in. We'll be able to do different things more. We'll be able to put back in a little bit of the side dishes, because right now all we're doing is the meat and potatoes. And we might be able to have even some dessert in there a little bit. If our days are a little longer, we'll be putting out too many fires throughout the day. I think we can break it up a little bit. Have faith in your staff a little bit. I guarantee you, we are ready to rise to the challenge. And like Vicki, I just want to say one thing about listening to Robbie. I'm not going to get emotional. Listening to Robbie read his letter. I just want to say thank you, Robbie. Thank you for believing in the people in the corporation and always putting students first that I've ever seen, and creating a place where I have felt truly valued as a staff member. And I just want you to know that I'm going to miss your leadership and the genuine care that you have shown me myself. And I wish you all the best in what the next chapter brings for you. And I know you're going to do amazing things.
All right, that wraps up the meeting here. Mr. Morgan, if you want to provide a brief overview of what was discussed this evening and verify if any more discussion is needed.
Yep, so we went over the results of the survey, we talked about the microschooling, talked about what to do with Wolf Lake. We heard some questions that we'll work on answering for the next time. We'll have all of our next board meeting, will be an actual board meeting on the 17th.
Okay, any more discussion from the board?
I want to kind of address what Vicky's concern was about saving money. If you just think about one aspect of the day, you've got 1,000 kids between the 3 buildings going around using the restroom. Every time you flush that toilet, it takes between 1 and 3 gallons of water. So if you reduce that just to activities after class or after school, like extracurriculars, just the water savings alone will save a ton of money. We don't have to have lights burning in every classroom all day long. You may go in and turn them on for half an hour to do some studying or something, but you turn them off when you leave, you're gonna save a lot of money on utilities there. So that's what the board and the school is looking at as far as savings. It's not really about, I don't want to say it's not about energy cost, but it's all the stuff, like Robbie said, toilet paper, paper towels, water, those kind of things is what we're looking at saving. And it seems like pennies.
I do understand that, but if you're somewhere for 8 hours versus 6.5 hours, you're gonna use the bathroom.
I was referring more to closing the building than the 8-hour day. Or the 4-day week, or whatever you want to call it. But, so everything that you have to consider all those pennies to make dollars.
All right, as a reminder, no decisions were made this evening. Allowable work and discussion will continue behind the scenes with formal action anticipated December. Is that accurate? Possibly a little in limbo with tonight's announcement, but that will be announced as required. I think we're ready to be adjourned, Amanda.
Meeting is adjourned at 5:57 PM.
I'm good to go.
Let's see, he set it up right between.
I know he did.
Anyone can respond.